So today we're going to be talking about John chapter 7. Now, we're talking about the entirety of chapter 7. We will get to reading it in just a moment, but I want to just go over what we talked about the last couple of weeks. Does anybody remember what we talked about the first week of March? This is when Jesus fed the 5,000 people. What did we discuss with them? Besides, bread and fish jerky, right? And a strong desire to have some salmon jerky. Well, in some of the meat, at least. So, we talked about the fact that Christ would do what for us? He would take care of it, right? Even our most basic needs. Our needs would be met and more, right? Because they went out afterwards and they collected 12 baskets of leftovers that all started from these 2 pieces of bread and these fishes. Right? Then the next week, we talked about Christ walking on the water. And what was the discussion in that? Do you remember? Just focus. Because what happened when Peter went to meet him on the water? He began to sink. He done sank, but it was when he lost his focus and he looked to the left and he looked to the right. We also talked about the fact that Christ knew that they were worried. Christ was aware of what their situation was, right? So then last week we talked about the situation with everybody crossing over, and we talked about purpose. We talked about purpose because Christ was saying, if you eat of my flesh and you drink of my blood, you will never hunger and you will never thirst again. That's a paraphrase. But we talked about purpose. We talked about realizing what you're passionate about, because the base of our passions are going to be fed by Christ himself. He will meet the most basic needs to drive our passion, to drive that thing that makes us feel the most productive. So, over this week during the discussion on the threads, you talked about what your passions were, the things that you really got into, that you strove after, and you talked about how you could use that for service. Well, this week we need to look at fine-tuning that. We all had a discussion about our passions, and that's good. We all had a discussion about how they may work towards fulfilling the need in the body, and that's excellent. But we need to fine-tune. We need to now take what we've learned over the past couple of weeks, and we need to bring that all together. So, keeping this in mind, how many people have heard of Nikola Tesla? A few of you. Epic rap battles of history. Edison versus Tesla. So there's that. But if it wasn't for Tesla, there's a couple of things that wouldn't be happening right this very second. Number one, believe it or not, these lights would not be on. You would not hear my voice amplified, other than just by acoustics. We would not be broadcasting anything over the internet at all. There would be no electricity flowing through the building. Because Tesla basically invented and refined alternating current. Without alternating current, which powers our homes, none of these things would be possible. Nikola Tesla was 2 things. He was brilliant and he was insane. Sometimes they go hand in hand. Towards the end of his life, I don't know how to really describe his diet. I guess it was kind of vegetarian, kind of vegan, but not really, because he subsisted on crackers and milk alone. Started having delusions about a pigeon that would always return to him. But throughout his life, he thought about things differently. He started out his American career working for Thomas Edison. Now, Edison, he may be an okay inventor, but let's be honest, he was after the money. He didn't actually invent the light bulb. He refined the process that was already there and searched through countless hundreds of filaments to get the right one to work. And then he monetized that. He actually took dogs, had paid boys in the neighborhood to pick up all the stray animals, and to show that his DC, his direct current, was better, even though you had to have stations every mile in order to amp it up than alternating current. He actually had them electrocuted by alternating current. Edison was not a nice man. His inventions, the things that he refined, great. Both of these people, though, had passion. They had ideas that were different from what everybody else was thinking. Now, I want you to think about Tesla and basically know that he invented the transistor. Does everybody know the importance of the transistor? There's hundreds of different types of transistors, but the ones that have been refined and worked on now produce for us something that most of us probably couldn't live without because it's integrated into our lives right now. Because of his work with the transistor, we now have personal computers. So that brings us to other people that had passion, that didn't go with the flow of things. I want you to think about people like Bill Gates, Steve Wozniak, Steve Jobs. These people did things against the mainstream, right? They had friends and family telling them that they needed to get out of their garage and stop playing silly games. They dropped out of college, working towards degrees, to work on their hobby. Because they worked on their hobby, today I can have my entire sermon on this little device here. Because they didn't listen to their friends, because they didn't listen to their family when they said, no, this is how you do things. This is what we know to be true. If you work hard, if you go to school, if you complete these tasks and you think this way, you will accomplish everything in life. Now, all of them followed a different plan. And all of them have brought wonderful and miraculous things to us. Can you imagine if you showed this tablet in the 1930s? It would be magic. Indistinguishable from magic. All of these people brought about change because of the drive and the passion that they had. All of them didn't listen to the people that were around them. What would have happened if they listened? I'd probably still be standing with a megaphone, yelling out loudly so that you could all hear me. Not that I don't have a loud voice. I'm able to project pretty well, so that's not too much of an issue. So, keeping their drive and their passions in mind, and obviously you know what my passion is, that is why I would bring out these three examples, obviously. Because they all had to do with computers, I have a passion for technology, in case you didn't, it wasn't obvious. So, now I would like to turn to John chapter 7. So John chapter 7, the entirety. So after this, Jesus traveled around Galilee. He wanted to stay out of Judea where the Jewish leaders were plotting his death. But soon it was time for the Jewish festival of shelters, and Jesus' brothers said to him, "Leave here Go to Judea, where your followers can see your miracles. You can't become famous if you hide like this. If you can do such wonderful things, show yourself to the world. For even his brothers didn't believe in him. Jesus replied, now is not the right time for me to go, but you can go anytime. The world can't hate you, but it does hate me because I accuse it of doing evil. You go on, I'm not going to this festival because my time has not yet come. After saying these things, Jesus remained in Galilee. But after his brothers left for the festival, Jesus also went, though secretly, staying out of public view. The Jewish leaders tried to find him at the festival and kept asking anyone if they had seen him. There was a lot of grumbling about him among the crowd. Some argued, he's a good man, but others said, he's nothing but a fraud who deceives the people. But no one had the courage to speak favorably for him in public, for they were afraid of getting in trouble with the Jewish leaders. Then midway through the festival, Jesus went up to the temple and began to teach. The people were surprised when they heard him. How does he know so much when he hasn't been trained? They asked. So Jesus told them, my message is not my own. It comes from God who sent me. Anyone who wants to do the will of God will know whether my teaching is from God or is merely my own. Those who speak for themselves want to glorify only themselves. But a person who seeks to honor the one who sent him speaks truth, not lies. Moses gave you the law, but none of you obeys it. In fact, you are all trying to kill me. The crowd replied, you are demon-possessed. Who is trying to kill you? And Jesus replied, I did one miracle on the Sabbath, and you were amazed. But you work on the Sabbath too, when you obey Moses' law of circumcision. Actually, this is the tradition of circumcision that began with the patriarchs long before the law of Moses. For if the correct time for your circumcision of your son falls on the Sabbath, you go ahead and do it, so as not to break the law of Moses. So why would you be angry with me for healing a man on the Sabbath? Look beneath the surface so that you can judge correctly. Now, some people who lived in Jerusalem started to ask each other, isn't this the man that they're trying to kill? But here he is speaking publicly, and they say nothing to it. Could our leaders possibly believe that he is the Messiah? But how could he be? For we know where this man comes from. When the Messiah comes, he will simply appear, and no one will know where he comes from. While Jesus was teaching at the temple, he called out, yes, you know me, and you know where I come from. But I am not here on my own. The one who sent me is true, and you do not know him. But I know him, because I came from him, and he sent me to you. Then the leaders tried to arrest him, but no one laid a hand on him, because his time had not yet come. Many among the crowds at the temple believed him. After all, they said, would you expect the Messiah to do more miraculous signs than this man has done? When the Pharisees heard this, that the crowd was whispering such things, the leaders said, and the leading priests sent temple guards to arrest Jesus, but Jesus told them, I will be with you only a little while longer. Then I will return to the one who sent me. You will search for me, but not find me, and you cannot go where I am going. The Jewish leaders were puzzled at this statement. Where is he planning to go, they asked. Is he thinking of leaving the country and going to the Jews in other lands? Maybe he will even teach the Greeks. What does he mean when he says, you will search for me, but not find me? You cannot go where I am going. On the last day, the climax of the festival, Jesus stood and shouted to the crowds, anyone who is thirsty may come to me. Anyone who believes in me may come and drink, for the scriptures declare rivers of living water flow from his heart. When he said living water, he was speaking of the Spirit, who would be given to everyone believing in him. But the Spirit had not yet been given because Jesus has not yet entered into his glory. When the crowds heard him say this, some of them declared, surely this man is the prophet we've been expecting. Others said, he is the Messiah. Still others said, but he can't be. Will the Messiah come from Galilee? For the scriptures clearly state the Messiah will be born in the royal line of David in Bethlehem, the village where King David was born. So the crowd was divided about him. Some even wanted him arrested, but no one laid a hand on him. When the temple guards returned without having arrested Jesus, the leading priests and the Pharisees demanded, why did you bring him in? We have never heard anyone speak like this, the guards responded. Have you been led astray too? The Pharisees mocked. Is there a single one of us rulers or Pharisees who believe in him? This foolish crowd follows him. They are ignorant of the law. God's curse is on them. Then Nicodemus, the leader who had met with Jesus earlier, spoke up. Is it legal to convict a man before he is given a hearing, he asked. They replied, Are you from Galilee too? Search the scriptures and see for yourself. No prophet ever comes from Galilee. So I appreciate your patience. That was a long passage. There's a couple of things that we need to do now. We need to take a look and compare Christ to those people that I mentioned before. There's passion in what Christ is preaching. There's a drive towards a goal. He is himself driven to accomplish what he's been sent to do. But there's a huge difference between him and Tesla and Gates, Wozniak, and Jobs. A huge difference, other than the fact that he's right. That was kind of cool. What is that difference then? He was sent to us. Some would say that those people were sent to fulfill their task. What's that? Didn't point to himself. Whose vision, whose goal was it that he was passionately seeking out to fulfill? It was God. It was his Father. So all this passion, this productivity, this reach for this end goal was not based on self. Tesla, he invented stuff for himself. He dreamed these things up because he couldn't believe that these things weren't available to him. He wanted free wireless transmission from the ionosphere of the Earth. He sought after these things not to be great himself, but because he couldn't dream of a world that didn't have these things and try to figure out a way to make them happen. Bill Gates, Wozniak, Jobs, they couldn't dream of a world that didn't have the things that they could do. They had a passion to bring personal computing to the masses. They had a dream to make it available so that it was in everybody's household. And they made that occur. But did they do it for everybody's benefit? No. They did it for their own. How is this bore out? Who are the richest men right now? Right? Gates is retired at this point so that he can spend his billions of dollars for whatever cause he sees fit. I think that's great that he's able to do that. But his passion, his drive, his desire, his end goal was his own. He wasn't fulfilling somebody else's goal. He wasn't fulfilling somebody else's task. He didn't put everything that he had into doing what somebody else had envisioned. It was just for personal gain. He enjoyed doing this for himself. So it's a fundamental difference that we need to understand. We have spent this month talking about where our focus needs to be, where our needs will be met, what our passions are, and how those passions will be fueled. We've talked about keeping our eyes on Christ, not worrying about what's happening to the left and to the right, not listening to those people who tell us that we're wrong, not listening to our friends and our family that don't understand why we believe what we believe. How many of you have had the experiences trying to share Christ with your family only to be rejected? How many of you have shared the truth of who God is and the relationship He wants to have only to be laughed at? You could, but you're stupid. One of the easiest things for you to do right this very second, you could go on one of the most popular websites there is. Ready? On the front page, every single day is the subreddit atheism. Every single day you will find people laughing at Christians. Because we don't operate the way they do. Our focus is somewhere else. We don't do the things that they do to get ahead. We have a different vision, a different understanding of the way things work. We have a different priority of what's important. We understand that our physical needs are taken care of, not because we seek to take care of our physical needs, because we take care of our spiritual needs, because we partake of the flesh, we partake of the blood. Our needs on a spiritual level are met, and that carries over to the physical level. It's not about us. We don't have the same drive, determination, and focus they do. We don't follow the way of the world, which tells us to look out for ourselves, do whatever we can to protect ourselves, do what we need to do to get ahead. Don't look to the left and the right and worry about who you're stepping on, because that doesn't matter as long as you're protected. Survival of the fittest, evolution at its finest. That doesn't lead to a full life at all. It leads to nothing but emptiness and death. How sad to be wandering around the earth with this understanding that when you physically die, nothing happens. The only reason you're here is because there was some cosmic accident. At some point in time, your whole line of family can be traced to some divergent ape, who itself was some divergent goo that crawled out of a sea of primordial ooze. People seeking for easy answers to understand things purely on just a physical level will never understand the truth. They will never understand what is taking place in the spiritual world. They will never understand that we are primarily and foremost spiritual beings. They will never understand where to get their sustenance from. So their spirit will wither and it will die because it is not nourished. It is not fed with the food that will satisfy forever. The thirst will not be quenched. In all of what we've read, as Jesus spent his time on earth, his family not believing in him, his brothers mocking him. Why don't you go up to Judea if you can do all these things? His message didn't waver. When we looked last week at disciples deserting him as he spoke the truth and clarified things, as he pointed to God who provided the manna instead of Abraham, instead of Moses. As he called it like it was, he pointed out the hypocrisy of the leaders. As he took time and spoke specifically about what he has done, not to defend himself, but just to point out the fact there's really nothing wrong with what he did, that he followed even their own lives in doing it. As he continued to preach his message and take upon himself to be basically an enemy of the state. He didn't do it by violent action. He didn't call all his people together to fight against the machine. He did it by telling the truth. He did it by trying to share understanding, knowing what the end goal would be, knowing where he would end up. He did all this to accomplish not his own personal goal, not to fulfill his own needs, wants, desires. He did it for all of us, to take away any obstacle that would prevent us from having the relationship with his Father. He did it so that we would be one with him as he is one with the Father. To have such a deep personal relationship, we would never ask, what would Jesus do? We would know what Jesus would do. He spoke the truth and exposed lies, and he did all of it so that he would die. He did it for you and for me. As we look forward to next week, as we look at Good Friday and we look at Easter, we think about what it is that we're celebrating. Think about what Josh said earlier, the most important day of the year that we celebrate. As we think about that, we think about what has happened, what has taken place for us, what goal was achieved, where that passion led. We need to think about where our passions are. We spent the week talking about what we were passionate about, what drove us. We spent time trying to discover what it is that makes us tick, the thing that we can't help ourselves from doing. And then discussing how we may be able to use that. But I say that we've got it kind of reversed. How can we use it for God? Where does our passion come in? Our passion should be fed from God, from Christ. When we talk about him fulfilling our very needs, he fulfilled the physical needs with the bread and the fish. He fulfills our spiritual needs and gives us everything we need to sustain ourselves and to continue to work towards our passion. Our passion begins with him and ends with our relationship with God. So it's not, what is my passion? How can I use this? How can I use this? What can I do to discover my passion? Think about what it takes to stand up before anybody. Be able to say, yes, you know me. You know where I come from. But I'm not here on my own. The one who sent me is true, and you don't know him. But I know him because I came from him. And he sent me to you. Think about what it takes to be able to speak the truth. To speak with a greater understanding. To stand there and be mocked, ridiculed. Think of how easily that could distract you from the purpose. Think of that hate, fear that's heaped upon us. Understand what it means to know that all of these things that you're accomplishing lead to death. What's our understanding? Where are our passions? Have we sought out the true source of all of our passions? Do we seek towards the true goal? Are we ready to spend time next week thinking about what has taken place for us? Examining the darkness that we live in. Seeing the light. Understanding the light sees everything. The light fades away from us. Are we ready to think about those things? Have we already dealt with these? These are the things we need to question. To think about. We've spent time, and we're going to spend more time in John this fall break next week for Easter. You need to understand what Jesus put himself into for you. What he was willing to do. We'll continue examining that throughout the rest of the year. Keep your focus. Understand where you get your nourishment. Think about these things as we enter. Let's pray. Father in heaven, I thank you for the grace, for the love, for the willingness. I pray, Lord, for strength, for wisdom, for discernment, as we use what you have given us to share you with those around us. We pray, Lord, that as we are the lights that you've asked us to be, we would not be deterred. We would stay strong. We would understand the care that you have for us, and the sustenance that you provide for us. I pray all of these things in your Son's name. Setting the stage for the things I love.